Breaking news, the autopsy report for Celeste Rivas Hernandez in the David murder investigation has just been released. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Okay, so thanks for joining us here on this breaking Sidebar. As I mentioned right here, this is what we've been waiting for in the David investigation, in the Celeste Rivas death investigation. This is the coroner's report. So it just came in, right? So after David was arrested, after he has been charged with the death of, charged with the murder of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez, this is what we've been waiting for. The cause of death. This has been sealed for months, and this is providing a lot of details. I'm going to tell you right now, it is very difficult to read through this. It is gruesome, but this is going to be a key point for both the prosecution and the defense. We know that Celeste's body, the body of this 14-year-old girl, was found in the trunk of a Tesla that was allegedly registered to David in Los Angeles back on September 8th, 2025. And again, this is going to be a key factor in this prosecution as he faces not only first-degree murder charges, because they're highlighting special circumstances here, lying in wait, financial gain, that she was a witness to a crime, but he's also facing sex crimes charges and mutilation of human remains. So I want to go through this. I want to bring on a special guest. I'm not going to do it by myself. I want to make sense of this. I'm bringing on Mary Jumbelic, a former forensic pathologist and former chief medical examiner, to go through this. Mary, thank you so much for taking the time. Before we even get started into the details, I would be remiss if I didn't just start with the statement from the County of Los Angeles medical examiner. I'm going to read it verbatim. The County of Los Angeles Department of Medical Examiner determined the cause and manner of death for 15-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez is multiple penetrating injuries caused by objects. The manner of death is homicide. Ms. Rivas Hernandez was discovered at 1100 hours on September 8, 2025 in the front trunk of a vehicle in a tow yard in Los Angeles, and death was pronounced by a detective with the LAPD. A deputy medical examiner conducted an examination of Ms. Rivas Hernandez on September 10, 2025 at the DME's Forensic Science Center. The cause and manner of death were determined December 9th, 2025. A court order initiated by the LAPD previously prevented the DME from releasing its findings. And this is the statement of Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Ode Ukbo. After several months, I am grateful this information can now be released not only to the public, but also to the grieving family enduring loss. It is unfathomable they have had to wait this long to learn what happened to their daughter. The transparency of the information contained in our findings and reports is essential for empowering the community to make informed changes, to effectively reduce fear and allowing the community to take informed action. Making the department's information publicly available is not just about accountability, it is also about social justice and prevention. By ensuring access to this information, we strengthen our ability to learn, to act, and ultimately to prevent the next tragic loss of life. I want to extend my gratitude to our partner agencies for taking the necessary step of filing an order with the court to make this disclosure possible. Mary, I'll first start there. It's not every day you hear a statement like this from a chief medical examiner. Let's start right there.
That's true. Sometimes we don't want to release the cause, the specifics about the cause of death in an active investigation, because perhaps it's information that only the killer would know. And so that's understandable that that might be obscured initially. But I think what the chief medical examiner in LA is saying is that they had this information, they wanted to release this information, and they were thwarted in doing so.
And when you hear, I'm reading from it, right? So the date of the injury, they say, is unknown. The place of the injury is unknown. Pronounced date, time, September 8th, 2025, 11 a.m. Date of examination, September 10th, 2025. And it was completed, right? So December 9th, 2025. Is that time span typical?
I think from September to December, that's reasonable because they're awaiting certain specialty ancillary tests, such as toxicologic examination. And it's much harder to do on a decomposing body than if it were fresh deceased. So the fact that that takes a couple months to get that information, so that that's part of the whole picture of, what happened to this poor teenager, that's reasonable.
And just to be clear, as we talk about this, David is innocent until proven guilty, and his defense attorneys have said that he did not murder Celeste and he is not the cause of her death. So I want to go through the specifics right now. Again, it is not easy to hear this, but this is going to be an important part of the legal case. So her cause of death has been ruled multiple penetrating injuries. Her death has been classified as a homicide. I'm going to read verbatim. And by the way, they put diagrams in here as well, but 2 penetrating wounds of the torso, right abdomen with injury to liver, left chest with penetration of underlying intercostal space and cortical disruption of adjacent ribs. Other findings: bilateral dismemberment of upper and lower extremities, multiple additional skin defects. Death was pronounced at the scene. Autopsy examination was limited by extensive post-mortem changes. And by the way, this is something to keep in mind because you're talking about dismemberment and decomposition. There are 2 penetrating wounds of the torso with smooth edges that may represent sharp force injuries. The wound on the upper abdomen penetrates the liver, and the wound on the left chest penetrates one of the left intercostal spaces with disruption of the adjacent ribs' cortical surfaces. The left lung appears intact. The bilateral upper and lower extremities show full thickness dismemberment. Multiple other skin and soft tissue defects are present without apparent associated internal injuries. The etiology of these defects is not clearly apparent due to severe post-mortem changes. Post-mortem toxicology performed on liver tissue shows the presence of a low level of ethanol, which may be due in post-mortem changes or ingestion, and does not appear to be contributory to the cause of death. Let's start right there. What does this mean, and what does this tell you, and what are there still questions about?
Well, the body sounds like it's in a state of postmortem decomposition with some loss of integrity of the skin surface and some bloating and skin slippage, etc. But despite that, the medical examiner was able to identify 2 wounds that penetrated, meaning they went into the body, significantly into the liver, which would bleed a lot, and significantly into the lung, the space around the lung, which also would cause a problem with air and blood accumulating there. And if it were a freshly deceased person, perhaps the edges of the wounds would tell you the weapon much more clearly, but it's more difficult in a decomposing body. But they are trying to generally describe the wounds and the shape without saying it's absolutely a knife that did this.
And to be clear, I'm glad you mentioned that, because earlier in the week, when they talked about the charges and the special circumstances, it was very specific, a sharp instrument they claim was used. They didn't say it was a knife or an axe or something. They were just said it was kind of specific. This was something that was picked up on by TMZ. They believe defense attorneys would jump on this. There are 2 penetrating wounds of the torso with smooth edges that may represent sharp force injuries. So in other words, is there room here to suggest that it was something else?
Something that was sharp enough to penetrate skin and underlying tissue and go into the liver and then into the space around the lung. Is it, what exactly is it? That's really the question. And I don't know that they'll be able to say exactly the weapon that was used.
Is there, and I'm going to go through this more. I don't want to ask this question. I have to ask this question. Is there anything in here to indicate that she was alive at the time of dismemberment?
Not from what the medical examiner described. It sounds like classic amputating the body to try to compact it, to hide it, to dispose of it. I've seen that in a number of homicide cases. So nothing that suggests that these amputations occurred while she was alive.
When you go to other parts of the report, they talk about tattoos, and they say description that she had a tattoo on the finger. This is something that we've talked about before that seemed to be the identifier, one of the ways that they identified her as Celeste. But when you go to other parts of it, other parts of her body, including eye color, cannot assess due to severe postmortem changes. Is that decomposition? Is that dismemberment? So I guess it becomes a question, how significant is that to determine what exactly happened to her, and how much does that complicate this analysis?
Well, forensic pathologists are skilled at identifying wounds and trauma in all manner of body composition. So all the way from the freshly deceased to the skeletonized to the exhumed body. Taking all of that with the education and experience of the Los Angeles Medical Examiner's Office, they're familiar with the interpretation of wounding in a body and seeing it at this decomposition level. So yes, of course it makes it harder. You have to really call on your knowledge base to interpret the wounds. The eyes being collapsed after death is normal. They lose their turgor. They don't, they're not the same shape. So not being able to see her eye color, that's a completely normal thing in a decomposition like this.
Her weight was 71 pounds. Is
Well,
that
you lose a lot of weight also, in this sort of death decomposition process. So
okay?
that's not reliable as to what her ante-mortem weight was.
I want to go to skin defects. Multiple skin defects are also present over the torso, with many perforating the skin and soft tissue without identifiable soft tissue hemorrhage or associated internal organ injuries. They range from 5/16 inch to 1/4 inches in greatest dimension. Multiple superficial linear abrasions are also noted on the right dorsal hand. The upper and lower extremities show full thickness dismemberment with relatively flat cut surfaces through the soft tissue and bone. No discernible hemorrhage is identified at these sites. Multiple fragments of blue plastic material are found embedded in the cut surfaces. Representative fragments are collected by medical examiner criminalists and submitted to the evidence department on September 8th, 2025. The right upper extremity is dismembered 9 inches from the top of the shoulder. The left upper extremity is dismembered 5 inches from the top of the shoulder. The left fourth and fifth fingers are amputated. The right lower extremity is dismembered in 2 places. One site is 12 inches from the top of the leg, and the other is 10 inches from the bottom of the heel. The left lower extremity is dismembered in 2 places. One site is 9 inches from the top of the leg, and the other is 15 inches from the bottom of the heel. It says the head is partially skeletonized with an absent left eye, and there is liquefaction of the soft tissues. What does this tell you about how she was dismembered?
It's important in dismemberment to look at the edges of the wounds. So any tool marks, any particular saw that might have been used to do this, the fact that there are these blue flecks give you some clue, if you're able to then locate something that was used in the process. And just doing the careful tool mark analysis on the ends of the bones in all of the amputations, the fact that everything is together there in there's the body bag and then there's the trash bag with the limbs in it. They weren't discarded in different places. So you have a lot of material to work on to try to figure out what was used to cut through the limbs.
What amount of effort or tools would be needed to do something like this? And based on the description, I hate to say this, is this someone you would suggest is sloppy, that has never done this before? Does it look disoriented in a way? Just trying to make sense of it.
It's interesting because many people, when they try to dismember a body, they'll try to go for the joint. Somehow they think that's a good place to go when that's a really complicated place to disarticulate a limb. And so the fact that they didn't go for the joint says something about their logic. They were making cuts, presumably to be able to confine her and fit her into a certain amount of space. And so they not only cut the legs in one place, they cut them in 2 places, to fit them in. Right. I think beyond that, you can just say someone's trying to hide the body. They are doing their best to compact the body to hide it, but they left it all there. So I I can't really psychologically analyze that part.
How is an eye missing? Is that from
Well, it's not
decomposition?
really missing as much as it's all gone away. I believe there was mention also in the report of insect activity.
Yeah, can you talk about that a
Um,
little bit?
you know, they don't go into great detail about it or about how many generations of insects are there, but it's usually fly activity that we refer to. And adult flies lay eggs in moist places on the body, and then those eggs start to grow and become maggots, and then they keep getting bigger, and then they pupate into the next generation, etc., so forth. So they can do a lot of destruction because they're scavengers, if you will. So they will eat dead tissue, necrotic tissue, and just digest it and eat it, in there, and that's what they do. So many times they will go for the soft parts of the eye and other soft areas.
And does that tell you how long the body has been decomposing? And does it actually relate to a particular location? Is there specific insects that inhabit a certain location? Or you could say perhaps there's evidence of those insects being in a certain location.
Yeah, I think that, the entomologists that do this work specifically, the forensic folks, they collect the maggots, they look at them, they see if there's pupa casings there, if any other material from the flies are there to try to date it. That could give important information.
Um, the female reproductive tract. Okay, this is
Mhm.
page 9. Uterus present and not enlarged and without endometrial lesions and hemorrhage. Ovaries
Mhm.
and fallopian tubes appropriate for age. Uh, Other private areas without lesions. Um, Now, it says other female reproductive tract findings, severe postmortem changes noted. This I just want to highlight because one of the allegations, right, has been put forward is, that David was allegedly engaging in illegal sex acts with a minor, right, with presumably Celeste. Um, and I know that there was at one point a question of was she pregnant or not? There's nothing to indicate this. Is there something about this particular section that stands out to you?
No, the report indicates the uterus was normal, so it wasn't enlarged as it would be in pregnancy. There wasn't anything seen on the inner lining of the uterus that would be seen in pregnancy. Uh, the external genitalia, the description is of decomposed tissue. So whether there was forceful penetration there, because of the advanced state of the decomposition, it wouldn't be seen.
I just want to go back to the skin defects. This is a part that we didn't talk about, or maybe we did. I just need to know if this provides any more information. Skin defect, excuse me, 3/4 inch. Entrance involving the right abdomen, 21 inches below the top of the head. 1 inch right of midline is a 3/4
Mhm.
inch length penetrating wound with smooth edges. The wound is orientated in the 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock directions.
Mhm.
Path. The wound track sequentially perforates the skin and soft tissue of the right abdomen and the liver. The wound track has an approximately depth of 1.5 inches front to back. The skin defect involving the lateral left lower chest, 15 inches below the top of the head.
Mhm.
6 inches left of midline is a 9/16 inch penetrating wound with smooth edges. Path. The wound track sequentially perforates the skin and soft tissue of the lateral left lower chest, left intercostal space, and enters the left chest cavity. The wound track has a depth of at least 2 inches left to right. The adjacent ribs show disruption of the cortical bone. Is this anything that we haven't
I
touched
mean,
upon?
those are the serious fatal wounds that
Right.
are described by the medical examiner. As I said, going into the body cavity and hitting the liver, which would bleed extensively, and then hitting the pleural cavity on the left, causing air and blood to fill up that space. Again, seeing the blood and seeing the air is not possible this many days of decomposition, but the wounds are there and they mark the track of the penetrating weapon. The fact that there's injury on the ribs themselves might be analyzed for a specific weapon as well. The markings on the ribs.
TMZ reported this. It, I believe, is to be in here as well, the toxicology findings, right? So it says there was I believe, a presumptive positive for methamphetamine and MDMA, but then apparently there was another screening that says meth was inconclusive, MDMA was not detected, that Celeste may have had alcohol in her system, didn't contribute to her death. I think we touched upon that before.
Right.
What, if you're reading the same thing, correct me if I'm wrong, but what does that tell you?
Well, just referring to the toxicology screening, you can screen for drugs and there can be interfering substances that might look like it's positive for a drug. And then when you do the in-depth analysis to confirm if that's present or not present, that's the more definitive test. So the not detected results after the screening is more relevant, that she didn't have that in her system. The alcohol, you can form alcohol, ethanol, after death in the decomposition process. And so having some there in a decomposed body is not indicative of imbibing the alcohol.
And just one more thing I want to touch upon. Just towards the end, just goes into more of the report, how when her body was found, she was wearing a tube top, underwear, leggings, and socks. I observed multiple holes in the front and back of the tube top. She was missing both arms above the elbows and both legs above the knees. The decedent was in an advanced state of decomposition demonstrated by foul odor, discoloration, liquefaction, insect activity, partial skeletonization, and skin slippage. Goes on at another point. She was dismembered and was inside a black body bag and black trash bag. We've known some of this before, but it's just so difficult to hear. Final thoughts on this and anything that we're missing from the report that stood out to you?
I mean, I think the medical examiner did a thorough job, and in fact, associating the clothing with the wounds on the body is a very important part of analyzing, the penetrating wounds. So some of those additional injuries in the clothing may shed some light on the marks that can't be further identified on the body. I think determining that it's these two fatal wounds that are the primary cause of death and that it's a homicide is very important here.
Mary Jumbelic, thanks for taking the time. I know it's never easy to go through this. I know it's never easy to go through it when you're dealing with a child, but that is exactly what the situation is here. And I appreciate really coming on very quickly to break this down with me. Thank you.
Certainly. Thank you.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. You can also check us out on NBC's Peacock. If you want to follow me, X, Instagram, my News Nation show, Jesse Weber Live, Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. Eastern. I'll see you next time, everybody.